talking on some dope topics. Lend an ear while we talk our shit, cause you know we bound to be so profound. Make you think a little when we push it down. Let us do the talking, just relax and unwind. Laugh your ass off, baby, have a good time. Robbie, Yosef, yeah, we something sublime. Run your mouth, bitch, yo, we out of our minds. Run your mouth.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Run Your Mouth podcast. Back by popular demand, we've got Professor Lady. How you doing, Kate?
Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm telling you, every time I do any live events and I run into people that listen to Run Your Mouth, they tell me that you were the favorite episode, and when am I getting you back on? So that back by popular demand.
Wow, cool.
That's the market, and I came across a topic that I was like, all right, I'm having some deep thoughts on this one. We got to delve into it. So the topic that I came across, it was in last week's Wall Street Journal, was about the theory that people could download their brains, that you can live past death, they can map out your neurons, they can put you on a computer, and you can keep on living. So I'll let you take it from there and maybe give us some of the actual information on this topic.
Well, I have to give you a warning first. I'm not familiar with the technology that would be needed to do such a thing, nor am I a psychologist. So I can't claim to understand what the mind really is, or if the mind is related to the brain, or what consciousness is. And I think that that's a good starting point, because I don't think anybody understands what consciousness really is. And the man who wrote the article is a professor of psychology and neuroscience, and he makes some pretty bold assumptions about the nature of mind and consciousness and its relationship to the brain. But if we put all that stuff aside and we just grant him that it is going to be possible at some point in the future that we cannot yet see, that we'll be able to upload the mind, I guess we could skip to that and just go right to the philosophical issues, because I'll tell you the nugget version. What my first impression of this article is that it's atheist porn.
All right. Because
it seems like, what would motivate a person to even want to think about this kind of thing? And he talks about the uploading of consciousness into the cloud after death, or even before death. He talks about it as a digital afterlife. And I would have never come up with a topic like this, because I don't need a digital afterlife. I'm a theist, so I think I'm, headed for some kind of afterlife, like hopefully, the nice one. But yeah.
So let's
pointed out that
let's just play around with that. So let's just go with the theoretical for a second, that there is the option of downloading your brain and continuing your consciousness. So I'll just tell you, because to me that's fascinating, and there's a lot of things to play around with, because my brain went to the same place of, first I started playing around with, okay, well, where would I want to go? Like if I could like map out where I would next go, like you have your option, you almost get to sit down with the designer, and he's like, okay, you're going to die soon, and we're going to put you into this world. So I mean, I'm a sick, perverted person. I'm like, great, I'm going to go to Porn Planet. It's going to be a beach. It's going to be me, nothing but naked chicks. And then within 5 minutes of playing that on my brain, I was like, well, if you don't like it, can you opt out? And then would that be, philosophically speaking, if you are a believer in God, even though it'd be weird to believe in God and choose to go to Porn Island, would that be considered suicide? Like if you extend your death to the point that you're living within a simulation, and then you realize, hey, this simulation is miserable, and so you wanna opt out, would you consider that suicide? And then the next step to that, I was like, well, if theoretically science can extend your life beyond your body, it's not that much different, from like being on even like any kind of medicine. It's like it's almost just a life extension. But that all is just looking past the issue of the fact that maybe consciousness isn't just a biological function. So let's just go with the entirely theoretical, and then we can work backwards to whether or not consciousness is some sort of a dual nature, or if this is just scientists are so wrong and they're bullshitting you to make you think that there's, that they can replicate consciousness just as through neuron mapping or putting you into whatever. So let's just go with the concept of, they can design an afterlife for you. All right? So we're all on the same page here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the problem with designing your own digital afterlife is that it would be limited to your own imagination. And even if you drew on like a whole bunch of artists and the entire human community that has ever existed and that exists right now at the moment of your programming your digital afterlife, it's still limited to human possibilities.
So I think I was thinking the exact same thing, that if everybody else in the program doesn't have agency, you're going to be living in a boring universe. You know what I mean? Like if everything is just
by NPCs, right?
Yeah. And then what's interesting about that is when you start to consider the fact that if you could choose your own universe, you'd want to live in a place where everybody has agency. You come to a place that doesn't have equality, but it's interesting because you're playing a game against other players. It was interesting to me in my own head that that's what I would, like if I was designing it from scratch, that's still what I would choose, because the alternative just seems like, well, that's going to suck.
Yeah, I mean, it's like playing solitaire. You know, you're not, or trying to play chess with yourself. I mean, it's not that interesting. And even broadening the scope, like even if you could enter the digital afterlife and there were other characters with agency there, other minds who had uploaded that with whom you could interact and have relationships, you're still stuck in the realm of human, like the limits of human imagination. And I have greater hopes for my afterlife. I mean, I think God's imagination is way better than even the sum total collective imagination of all of humanity. So,
well, it's outside. It's outside the scope of what we can even comprehend. So if you believe in the idea that there's an afterlife that's better than what we currently recognize as being existence, it's clearly going to be infinitely better than whatever you imagine as being the best life possible. Now, let me ask you on that, because that's a fascinating test of faith. That if on your deathbed they give you the option of, all right, you're done, you're quitting out, versus, hey, we can upload you, so you would go, hey, I did my time here, this is what I was supposed to do, I'm gonna take the out option. I'm not holding you to this.
Into the digital afterlife?
There's no document here. It's not like if you make this decision now, you're going to be held to it at your afterlife. But conceptually,
right,
you would choose for I'm taking the out.
Yeah, like actual death. Yes.
So
I don't want to go into somebody's digital universe. Hell no. Get me out of there. I mean, now, even if it was one that I chose out of a menu of all possible options, I wouldn't want to go there. The extent of my imagination isn't that great. So, I'd rather suffer oblivion than be limited to my own imagination for the rest of, the extent of cloud life, whatever that happens to be.
Now, let me change the equation a little bit. Now, when I was thinking about this concept of, hey, you go to like a designer and you design your afterlife. You tell them, this is what I always enjoy sandwiches, but I didn't like that they ruined my stomach. So if you can put me back in a time when I got along with cheese, that would be great. I also always want to be hungry, but never want to get fat. So that's got to be a part of the equation. Women, I want a full head of hair. I want everyone to think I'm attractive, and I want to be like, there's that thing, but I played that through to the end and I'm like, all right, I don't really think I'd enjoy that. I think what I would sooner opt for, I think if the ability to upload your brain, your consciousness exists, it's just as likely that they could download that into like a robot kind of thing that just continues to live in our, like, doesn't go into a digital realm, just continues to live in our physical world. So if that option existed, which would really just be extending your own life, would that change your perspective at all?
Not mine.
Not yours.
I think, even if I was a Victoria's Secret supermodel and, just had like IQ of 200 or whatever, and I had so many talents and abilities and I was the life of every party, I would get bored. It would be boring because like you can only do that for so long. And I don't know, maybe that's just me. And I do kind of get bored easily. I wouldn't want it to be stuck in that like hamster wheel for forever. I mean, it'd be fun for a while, sure. And, even if you could, let's say, choose a different avatar so that you can change shapes, experience what life would be like from the standpoint of a cat or a different gender or something like that. That would get boring too. You'd cycle through all of the cataloged reality.
What I'm describing, though, is basically just extending your life. Imagine there was a robot that gave you an extra 100 years. So you would still say, like, if you lived to age 100 and you got another 100, but your 100 was your brain being put into a robot, it's not necessarily that dissimilar from if they had regenerative cell whatever that kept you, age 80 permanently or something. That wouldn't interest you. You're like, I want to do one stretch of life. I got enough faith that I'm going to get done what I need to get done, and God's on the other end, and I'm going to a good place.
Yeah, because life gets boring after a while. I mean, it's
you're in a safe place for depression, so don't worry. You're welcome to unload on us. We just did a whole episode on depression, so I get it. No, I take I'm a cheerful person, and I enjoy my existence, and I like my job, and I have nice friends and a great family, and so like I'm really, really lucky. I consider myself to be incredibly privileged, but even still, like, I don't know, what's there left to do after 80 years? Yeah. Well, I guess it's the fear of the unknown and life preservation, and I guess my lack of faith in, hey, there's definitely an afterlife there. So I think I would definitely go with the extension model. But what's interesting about the extension model is that I feel like if you choose to extend, and God, and you're still within the God reality, you shouldn't be faulted for suicide at that point. Like if you take the robot option at age 100, then like that should be marked as the end of your actual life. Now, here's a more interesting question. Let's say you're still within the God framework and you're able to download your consciousness. But the consciousness downloading is not a duplicate, which could be an option. It could be you download your consciousness and then you continue to exist, and then your consciousness goes forward as well, which essentially becomes a dual identity of you. So now, under that framework, would that be of any interest to you? Because then you get to explore both. There's a version of you that's going to just keep going, and then there's a version of your consciousness, and they're not. You know what I mean? The two can be totally separate entities at that point.
Right, and that's what the author discusses. He talks about it as like a branching Y. Like if your life begins at the bottom stalk of the Y, and then it splits as you move forward, and one of you is like simulated inside of the cloud, and the other one is still biological. I look at that as no different from if you were to clone yourself. Right. So if you clone yourself, like the moment you clone yourself, like that's not you anymore. And so I think that if you upload your mind into the cloud, then that's not your mind anymore. If it has a will and if it has a consciousness of its own, then it's going to take a different path. So, I mean, it's sort of like identical twins. They look alike, or they may have like a common origin, twins that share a womb and look like each other. But there's so much, if it genuinely has an independent will, which you would have to do if it's going to be any kind of an agent in this digital afterlife, it would just be a different person at that point. And I think that gets into like a really sticky philosophical problem, which is the problem of personhood. What constitutes person? And I mean, of course, like that question has been raised quite a bit within the abortion debate. Is a fetus a person? Is a baby a person? Does rationality constitute a person? If so, then anybody under the age of like 4 isn't actually a person, or people with like severe mental retardation, they're not people, or people who are in comas aren't people. Don't get me in trouble. Well, it's fine. I don't mind getting fired. So yeah, I mean, I just think it's like cloning or if there's some way to like double your existence, it's now a different entity altogether because you're not in control of it. So, I mean, if you could still control the you that's inside the consciousness that's inside the digital afterlife, that would be different. It'd be like, manipulating a character in a video game, I guess. But it doesn't seem like the author was suggesting that. He was suggesting uploading the author consciousness and then letting it go, like letting it do its own thing.
We're just we're taking the author as a jumping off point. But I would say that if the technology exists, in my mind, there's no reason why you need to kill off the original. It could be like copying a CD. The difference being that the CD the function of the CD is your consciousness. So the same way I experience my consciousness, my thought process, my self-awareness, you could have two different people that are doing that at the same time. And it could be true that you put, like, at that point, it's almost like twins, but twins that started at age 65 or something. But yes, right. They're going to go in different directions. But I guess we're in the theoretical model that there is no soul aspect to consciousness, and we're going to go backwards and discuss whether or not that's real. But in the theoretical, that it's entirely a biological phenomenon, that the circuitry of your brain comes together and forges this experience that we basically just label as consciousness. There's really no reason why you shouldn't be able to have a split on that.
Well, sure. And so it's a new form of reproduction. So you would give
self-reproduce.
You would give birth to your own brother, or I would give birth to my own sister. And I mean, that's bizarre and maybe narcissistic. But I mean, if you want asexual reproduction, that's a way to do it.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I don't think, to me, like, asexual reproduction is not necessarily more narcissistic than reproduction. It's like just kind of the biological imperative towards self-preservation. Those are one.
I think it's more narcissistic because at least theologically and philosophically, when you come together with another person in love and you create a new life through that union, it's a unifying force. It's what Aristophanes would call like a bringing together of the two broken halves that are meant to be together. So it's more creative than just like replicating yourself or cloning yourself or giving birth to this weird uploaded consciousness inside of a digital reality. So I think it is narcissistic. It's like it's like the more exaggerated version of having your portrait painted. I always thought that was kind of narcissistic, or people who take selfies. I mean, like, how narcissistic is social media when people are constantly uploading their damn selfies? I mean, there's a reason I'm not on social media at all, because I can't stand that kind of narcissism. So this is like the more radical version of uploading a selfie onto Facebook or whatever people do. It's like you're uploading your entire consciousness and saying, hey, look at how great I am. Now you can all enjoy me in your digital universe for as long as this little virtual reality lasts.
Maybe it's a function of just how narcissistic that I am, that I still hear that, and it sounds to me like, wait, but you wouldn't just choose. And it could just be fear of the unknown. Like, no one, no one embraces really the concept of death. It's something that it's something that we're all going to experience. You got to do. But to me, it's like if the extend option exists, it's not even necessarily, at some point, it could be so normalized that it's almost not that different than just taking medicine now.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I don't know, for me, at least personally, the scary part of the death thing isn't like what happens after you die, because Socrates he said, he was on trial for his life. They sentenced him to death. And he said, death is one of two things. Either it's nothing, and it's sort of like a night of dreamless sleep where you just you evaporate into it. There's absolutely no consciousness whatsoever, or it's a relocation to a certain spot, which he had good faith that he would go to a better place and he'd be able to hang out with all the other cool dead people. What was that?
It could be hell, though.
Well, yeah, but he practiced virtue his entire life and exhorted people to cultivate virtue and justice in their souls. So, he had good hope that there was going to be something better. But so like that's not an issue for me. Personally, I couldn't care less.
I'm super lazy, and I feel like if you gave me an extra 100 years, I might actually get some insight in my life. It's like by age, I'm not going to be done. I'm still going to be retarded. So it's like you gave me an extra 100 years and some fresh legs. Maybe I turn it around. That's kind of my outlook. But you seem to feel a little more comfortable with what you've accomplished so far.
Well, I don't sleep a lot, so I've had plenty of time to think about, death.
Yeah. Well, you wake up at 4 a.m., which
But
sounds miserable. I don't know why you do that to yourself.
oh, it's the worst, man. It's terrible. I hate my schedule, but what are you gonna do? These children need enlightenment.
Yeah. Well, just don't.
So
I didn't take early morning classes. Why do you teach them? What time's your first class? Like 8 a.m.?
8 a.m. Yeah.
And you got to wake up at 4 to
And
get there.
I didn't choose to teach at 8 a.m. I would avoid an 8 a.m. class at all costs, but they assigned me the 8 a.m. classes because the senior professors, they get to choose the better times.
Yeah, and you keep getting
So they
fired
teach classes
for
that start at noon.
Yeah, and you keep getting fired for sharing those libertarian opinions of yours. So, you're always going to get shafted with the 8 a.m. classes. Makes sense. All right, now, last theoretical question on this. Let's say you can extend your consciousness and, in fresh legs. So we're going with my model where it's people are not going to want to go to a digital realm. They're going to choose to basically stay here, but they're going to get themselves put into robots. And those robots might look exactly like humanoids. They might just be basically fresh versions of you. And by then, maybe we'll be past Earth. You'll be able to travel to different planets and experience all sorts of interesting new things. Do you think, leaving your body earlier, let's say you want to get out of your body at age 50 so that you stay ahead of the aging process. Let's say that existed as an option that you could kind of, obviously part of your life experience does tie into your biology. And that, for example, you can only drink so much or some people can party more because they can wake up in the morning and get on with their life. Some people can eat cheese still and they can have that life. I don't get to live that life anymore. But you see what I'm saying? It's so much your personality will get tied into, hey, I got the confidence of a dude with a huge dick because I was born with a huge dick. Everyone's got different things going on, which is very much so tied into your biology. So the sooner you opt out of your body for some sort of perfect robot thing, you're already in you're living within a different framework. And you know what I mean? You're almost going to lack the wisdom of what that tie-in of consciousness to your particular body was when you opt out of it. I don't really know where I'm going with this. I was going to say, if you opt out before your body was going to go, do you see that as a form of suicide?
Well, two points. I think there's two here. The first is, it sounds like you're taking a different tack than the author of the article did because he imagined that when you uploaded your consciousness, your mind, whatever, that it would take on a life of its own and go in its own direction, and the biological being would still live out the rest of its existence. And it's like an insurance program for
that's weird.
your mind.
And then you
so
can just
you have a backup.
You can just keep uploading into the framework. So here's what terrifies me about that. That's why I'm changing this model. I would hate to download. Yeah, go for it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that it sounds like you're thinking of it more in terms of the Avatar movie, where you get your essence gets placed into a new being entirely. And so you have the continuity of your consciousness and your preferences and your values and your beliefs and your ideas and your wisdom and all that stuff. You have that continuity, but it's you're kind of surrendering your biological body for this eternally handsome, large-dicked version, robot version.
You get it.
of existence. Yeah. Which is, I mean, that's a different concept. And would that be suicide? And
because it sounds like you're experiencing death.
Well, yeah, if you surrender your biological body, but it's well, what is life? Is life constituted merely by the functionality of your lungs and your heart? Because they can keep a body alive for a really long time. People in a vegetative state are technically alive because there are machines that are breathing for them, and they have their blood is being pumped for them by a machine. So technically they're alive, but there's no brain activity. So are they really alive? Now, some different people define death differently. Some say it's the respiratory cardiac functions, when they cease, that's what death is. And then some people say, well, when brain activity ceases, you're dead. So first of all, philosophers and doctors don't even really agree on what death is. So if death is the death of the biological body, then, if the technology does exist and you can somehow upload a mind or a conscious, I don't ever think that's going to be possible. But that aside, if it is for some reason possible, and you can upload your consciousness, then maybe you're not even dead. Maybe you just moved.
All right. Well,
like you move, you move apartments, so you move bodies. It's not a big deal.
So just to recap, in this incredibly trippy and weird conversation that we're having, you and I both agree that if you could just, if you could go into the digital realm, we're not interested. You're not interested because it wouldn't be as imaginative as what the alternate reality of death would be. I wouldn't be into it because I don't really like suffering or pain, and the idea of continuing into some new unknown world that might be incredibly boring, that I don't know how I get to opt out of, that sounds like more of a risk proposition to me. Like, everyone could even come back from that realm and be like, dude, it's the best thing you've ever experienced. It's nothing but pleasure. I'd be like, yeah, no. That sounds risky. They can have bathrooms there. You know what I mean? Like, I got Jew anxiety brain. I'm not going to this realm. I need more details. I need to show up for a little bit, check it out for myself, scope out the situation. But if they were uploading you into robots that you just kind of continued your existence, and you're like me, I'm trying to perfect this thing. I want all the knowledge. I want to know everything. And then maybe at some point you're like, all right, I accomplished it all, but I'm nowhere near there. But okay, now let's take it back to the very beginning, where I think you're probably going to have a lot of insight in terms of the philosophers that have probably already thought of this. But the first question to ask is, what is consciousness? And is consciousness entirely just some freak occurrence because of your biology? And you're going to argue, of course not.
Nobody understands what consciousness is. Psychologists don't understand it. Philosophers don't understand it. Neuropsychologists don't understand it. Nobody understands consciousness. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and there was a guy who suggested that maybe the thing that's between your ears is actually kind of like a satellite dish, and it's just like picking up on a signal from wherever consciousness is, and it's just like tuning into something. And it's funny because it made me laugh, because right now I'm revisiting the pre-Socratic philosophers in my ancient philosophy class. And when you go back to the pre-Socratic philosophers, in terms of understanding what they called nous, mind, I think we've gone backwards rather than forwards. I think we haven't made any progress. And like their understanding, the material monists, what they're called, the Milesian philosophers. So Thales, Anaximander, Anaximenes, and then the other fellows who followed up later on. They weren't from Miletus, Heraclitus and Parmenides. These guys, they understood like consciousness or mind as being it's a cosmic phenomenon. It's something that's out there and that we tap into by tuning yourself to like the right frequency. So it's sort of like that's what thinking is. Thinking is twisting the knob on your radio to get the right reception. And so when you think, you don't think, your thoughts aren't original. You're just kind of absorbing or receiving the signal of the universe, and that universe is the mysterious unknown, and we can understand very, very narrow fragments of it in our experience. But it's kind of interesting because they also say that you can understand the whole without understanding the all, because you can never. So your quest to live slightly longer, the extension program, you want a couple, maybe like an extra 100 years or something like that, so that you can like learn more stuff and figure stuff out. Well, they said, you don't need that extra time, because if you have good pattern recognition, if you can see form and you can see the outline of form, if and this is what is frequently on like IQ tests, is pattern recognition. So they'll set up a series of shapes or a series of dots in certain patterns, and then they'll say like, okay, well, what comes next? And so if you can predict what comes next, it shows a certain kind of IQ level. And so pattern recognition is super important, and that's exactly what the pre-Socratic philosophers were talking about. So you don't need more time to figure stuff out, because if you can see the pattern of the whole, You don't need to see all of it or even most of it to know what it is.
So just if I'm going to somewhat put what you said into my own terms, and you'll tell me where I got it completely wrong. Okay, so our brains are essentially like receiving equipment. Like the same way your radio has an antenna, our brains are kind of this antenna thing. And separate from us, there's like planet consciousness. And we kind of tap into planet consciousness by receiving these waves and interpreting those waves. And the goal in life is to get better and better at receiving and interpreting those waves so that when you get to the afterlife, you kind of have a clear vessel by which you can, I guess, interpret. You have a better experience in that realm because you've tuned your receiver properly for pattern recognition. Is that somewhat the idea there?
Well, I think it's not like you're going to have a better life in the next realm, if you've done a better job with your receiver in this realm. You're going to have a better life here, now, if you're well attuned to the truth that's vibrating throughout the cosmos. And I do think that there are like frequencies and whatnot. I mean, that's how they spoke of it, like in the pre-Socratic realm, but even like Nikola Tesla also spoke of like the frequencies of the cosmos and things like that. And that we, being attuned to it, we can tap into enormous amounts of not just like knowledge and wisdom, but also power.
So how would you compare, I guess, what you're describing as the frequency model for consciousness versus, I guess, what religion would say, hey, you have a soul. Like, it has not, the religious model is almost like it has nothing to do with your brain. God granted you a soul. The soul is this little thing. It's that inner voice. You kind of know what it is. It's living inside of you. It's just stuck in this body for now. And that's kind of what we experience as consciousness. And your soul is almost stuck in your body for now. And at some point, your body dies and your soul, it continues into whatever that next realm is. So how, because I know you're of a lady of the faith, so how would you tie in, I guess, what you kind of, it sounds to me like you believe in the frequency model, so how would you tie that in with like the religious soul model?
Well, I think that the soul model is independent of religion. I think religion picks up the idea of the soul from philosophy. And so, because, the pre-Socratic Greeks believed that there was a soul, they called it mind. Later on in the pre-Christian tradition, like Socrates, who was 5th century BC, spoke of death as the separation of the soul from the body. So he believed that there was an independent entity, and he actually said that the soul is the true self. And he said, so you are your soul. You are not your body.
Did you grow a tail?
No, I have a new roommate. He's great. He's a furry quadruped, and he poops in a box, which is really, really convenient. So he's going to chew on my paperwork here, but that's fine.
Does he piss everywhere,
I
though?
think he's looking for treats. What was that?
Does the cat piss everywhere, though? That's the worst part about cats.
Oh, no, not at all.
They're good with the shitting. It's the pissing.
Just babysitting him. He's such a sweetheart. He's a good boy.
Okay, I'm sorry. That was the ADD at its best. I totally derailed you there. You were explaining to us how the soul model fits in with the frequency model.
Yeah. Okay, so whatever the soul is, you can call soul mind. You can call. I like the word soul better because I think that it has more life to it than mind.
A little more vibrant.
That's just me. It's personal preference. What is that?
I said it's a little more vibrant. It's like poetic in that it seems to encompass a little bit more.
Yeah.
It leaves room for the
soul,
mystical.
You think like music, groove.
Now, yeah.
So the soul, like, and this is an issue that goes way, way back. And then, of course, there's a crisis in modernity with Descartes because he can't reconcile how soul could have any possible connection to the material world. And, how is it that a soul inhabits a body? How is it that a will and a consciousness informs our choices, our decisions, and our actual movements? And it is like somewhat mysterious. I think his final conclusion was that, well, he remained somewhat agnostic till he died, but he suggested that perhaps the soul was connected in the pineal gland. I don't even know. I have no idea what that means. But the soul being like the self, like this, our personality, our will, our intentions, like the co-experience dynamic unity of act, which is how Max Scheler defined like what the self actually is. Socrates saw the soul as using the body like a tool. You know, it's a temporary habitat for the soul, but nothing more than that. In fact, he was so bold as to claim. Now, of course, this is all through the dialogues of Plato, so a lot of this is Platonic ideas, and he's using Socrates as a character. So I just want to make that clear. But I don't know if that was clear or not. But anyway, he said that the soul. The soul's habitation of the body, like the body has nothing to offer us in the way of knowledge, and so it's simply like the soul's ability to tap into ideas. So, okay, let me just give you a stupid example. I'm looking for something I can use as a prop.
But can I argue against that? Even if you're within the God model,
sure.
Why would God put you into a physical body if that body offers no opportunity for knowledge? I would think that the reason why he constrains you to a physical body is because there must be something that is worthwhile or something to be learned from that experience. But that experience is tied into the body. It kind of becomes an anti-God proposition to go, hey, you just tied us to a body for just on a whim, as a goof.
Yeah. Do you want me to go into why I think that we're in a body?
Yeah, why not? I mean, we're going all over the place. We steer here, we steer there, we get some insight.
Yeah. Well,
there's no straight curriculum here. There's no test later. There's no board with the bold words that we were supposed to get to. There are no rules.
Okay, cool. Because my understanding of this whole problem goes back to St. Augustine's interpretation of Genesis. And so when God created Adam and Eve, they were not two separate individual human flesh beings like we are now. They didn't have meat sack bodies. So when St. Augustine reads Genesis, what he understands is that God created Adam as spirit, Eve as soul, and bound them together in a celestial immortal body. That's how he phrases it. And so that's when Genesis said that God made man in the image and likeness of God, it was a trinity contained within a unity. So later on, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, they're all God, and yet three persons. So the original human being was spirit, Adam, soul, Eve in their celestial immortal body, which is a bond of love. And so it wasn't until after original sin, when God punishes Adam and Eve for taking the fruit of the knowledge of the tree of knowledge of the difference between good and evil, it's a mouthful, that they're punished. He said, if you eat of the tree, you will surely die. Well, how could they die if they were made of this immaterial stuff? If one was spirit and one was soul, like there was no way for them to die. So I'm just doing this from memory, so forgive me if I happen to be mistaken, but chapter 3, verse 21, I believe, the author of Genesis says, and God gave them tunics of skin. So it's as punishment for original sin that the human being gets the meat sack body. And so that's when individuality is introduced to the human condition. So Adam and Eve were not content to be one with God. They fell for a different understanding of unity, which was individuality. So they literally fell for their own selves. It was the first act of narcissism.
Oh, that's really interesting. And then also, I guess to go back to your original point, we're in bodies as a punishment. So there isn't necessarily knowledge or insight that comes from the experience of being in a body. It's a containment unit, almost like a prison for the soul. That wasn't the original intention or design of God.
Wait, I want to back up a little bit, because when you say God punished Adam and Eve by casting them into bodies because he warned them that they were going to die, what he was doing was he was giving them what they wanted. He was just saying, it's like there was a stupid country song that was out years ago, and I can't remember what it's called, and I can't remember who did it, but it was like, one of God's greatest gifts is unanswered prayers. And that's true. And so we frequently don't know what we want, and even if we think we know what we want, we shouldn't want it. But we're insistent. We're like greedy little children. And so God said, okay, you really want individuality. You really want to see what the knowledge of good and evil is like. The only way to know the difference between good and evil is, well, they already experienced good because they were in the Garden of Eden. Hell, they were in paradise. Like, that's awesome. So they already knew good. In order to know the difference between good and evil, they had to experience evil. And the only way to do that, since evil didn't exist yet, was become evil. So sin was their experience of evil, which then established the difference between good and evil, and they experienced death. So it was suffering evil and becoming evil at the same time was their introduction to what evil actually is. So the meat sack body, it's the thing that dies. The soul and the spirit don't die. And so, like, okay, we're in this world. Yes, it's a punishment. It's a punishment that we didn't think was a punishment at the time. We asked for it. God granted us our wish. Here we are. Now it's the task of, like, what life is all about is use your meat sack to gain as much knowledge and wisdom as you possibly can so that you can understand that you're responsible for your own shitty condition, and you can hopefully find your way back. You could hopefully, like, use the clues that are all around you, because when the human being fell, all of creation fell. So we brought everything down with us, and hopefully we can use our meat sack selves to discover the clues that'll lead us back. And Plato says the way that we do this is by tracing. It's like tracing breadcrumbs, right? Hansel and Gretel style. We're going to trace the breadcrumbs out of the forest. And we do that by recognizing beauty and by chasing and pursuing beauty. And the most beautiful thing that there is God. So we can start with physical beauty. We can be attracted to another person. We can be attracted to a beautiful landscape, a sunset, a book, a poem, a song. Those are more physical, incarnate manifestations of beauty. But from there, we should seek higher types of beauty. And so this is what's called the ladder of love in Plato's text, The Symposium. So you gradually sort of you ratchet your way up, you climb your way up this ladder of love, and you start with like one beautiful body and then multiple beautiful bodies. And then from there you move on and you see that there's beauty in souls and knowledge and everything else, and wisdom and customs of institutions. And then ultimately, like, the highest beauty is the beautiful itself. And that's the divine. And from there we can give birth to the beautiful because we become pregnant. And that's what he says. And so we do good deeds and then we improve our own life that way. And so despite being in a meat sack body, we can still achieve a certain kind of happiness here on meat sack planet.
I'm being that both inspiring and fascinating. And for people who didn't listen to our earlier discussion, we got into it a little bit about belief in God. And I think for the sake of this conversation, I think it's more interesting because you have so much insight within that model. And I think even if you don't want to take God on faith, I still think there's a lot of wisdom in what you're saying. So no God arguments for me on this one. I just think that was all, particularly insightful and fascinating. Now, what I want to kind of also add to this discussion that we've had so far, which is so interesting, because at the beginning of this, you said this is kind of, you didn't say it was science porn. What did you say it was? What did you say that the idea...
Atheist porn.
It's atheist porn. So what's interesting about that is this kind of gets lost in the conversation of both religion and science is, and correct me if I'm wrong on some of these details, but I believe they still don't quite understand how matter equals mass. They still don't understand what dark matter is, and dark matter makes up, I think, 50% of everything that's in the universe. They don't understand original cause, so they go, hey, there's evolution. Well, what started the chain of evolution? Well, we don't fucking know. And then they still don't understand exactly what conscious experience is. I guess based on the information I'm hearing from you and the 10 minutes of Googling that I did, there are a lot of intelligent people out there that seem to think it's kind of like a dual nature between consciousness. It's somewhat forged in your brain and somewhat forged by the fact that there's got to be some sort of an external that's kind of granting us whatever consciousness is, or your model, which I hadn't thought about till now, so I'm going to need some time to kind of think about and wrap my head around, which is the tapping into frequency idea. But the point is to kind of just look at it and go, well, that's science, or in this idea, it's science to the extreme where they want to go, hey, you know that whole religious thing which kind of gave you a way of wrapping your head around the afterlife? Well, we're on the science side. We got you covered here. It's a biological phenomenon, and that's how sure we are of it. We're actually going to cure this whole death thing. And so what you're saying is kind of fair, and that, listen, let's understand how limited science really is. They're looking at about 50% of the equation and breaking that down with some massive assumptions about how you even kickstart that 50%.
Yeah, I mean, consciousness, like nobody gets it. Nobody understands consciousness. I mean, being self-reflective, like why when my new roommate, my cat, when he looks in the mirror, why doesn't he recognize himself?
Or start doing his makeup?
I don't know.
You know? Why doesn't he go, hey, this isn't working for me?
Oh, he's adorable enough. He doesn't need it.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so like, what makes us self-reflect? What makes us? I addressed a question from one of my students yesterday, which was very interesting, and he said, like, yeah, like, because we were talking about Parmenides, and Parmenides says that thinking is being. So then the question came up, okay, if thinking is being, then do things that don't think really exist? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe they exist in as much as we think about them. But where does thinking come from? How is it that we're able to think about thinking? Metacognition. It's
Right.
very bizarre. And I mean, Aristotle was the one who said, God is thought thinking itself. Now,
You mean thinking about thinking, or he's thinking I missed that point.
It's thought, the way that he formulated it, he said, God is thought thinking itself. Now, there have been moments when I've had drugs where I understood that.
Right. Well,
But I'm regretfully sober.
On that note, I'm a big fan of this guy. His name's Gurdjieff. He's somewhat of a weird philosopher type character, but he's got this concept called remembering oneself, which is basically what you're describing, which is he's very into kind of like questioning your mechanical reactions and your thought process. And he calls that kind of remembering oneself, remembering the work, that you remove yourself from kind of your instincts and your instinctual reactions, or the anger that you feel, the jealousy you feel, kind of the emotional thing. And you start kind of questioning the thought process, which he refers to as remembering oneself. And he also says that that's a very important step to actually kind of becoming conscious, because a lot of people walk around with mechanical reactions to life around them. Like, for example, you know, it's kind of like that basic psychology thing. Something shitty happened to you as a kid, and like it's ingrained in you to react in a certain way. So part of what he describes as doing the work is starting to kind of really being mindful and watching what your mechanical thought processes are. And he calls that very thing of kind of being mindful and observing the voices in your head and the mechanical reactions as remembering oneself. And, you know, everyone's a hack. Apparently he stole that from Aristotle. That's all I'm trying to get at. Okay, so there were two other random topics that I wanted to get into, but before I do that, okay, I feel like you probably have some other random insights or wisdom that I might have cut you off before you got to. So I want to give you the floor here.
Well, no, I just wanted to say that the recollection, the remembering oneself, I think is a really, I mean, it's a nice way to think about it. And Plato, like the Platonic tradition, the Neoplatonic tradition, that's definitely embedded in both of those traditions. And so, you know, how do you remember yourself? Well, there's two ways to do that, basically. One of them is introspection, which is self-examination. So in the Apology, Socrates says the unexamined life is not worth living. So take a critical look at who you are, what you've done, why you've done it. Learn how to give an account and an explanation of your life. And that's what he was kind of calling people on, which is probably why they killed him. And then the other way,
no one wants that guy around. Yeah, we're trying to fuck boys over here. What's your problem, Aristotle?
He was the gadfly of Athens. You know, he was irritating everybody, just sort of biting them, and yeah, he liked boys.
Isn't there something? There's something really funny about that. The most famous philosopher of all time was just a giant pain in the ass.
I think it's awesome. I mean, that's what I do for my students. Enough
with the fucking questions, Aristotle.
Well, it's true. Yeah, he wasn't a pain in the ass. Although it's funny because like throughout history, philosophers have routinely been exiled,
Yeah.
burned at the
Because
stake.
they're like, they question everything. And it's like, dude, I'm just trying to eat a fucking hamburger. Do we have to question that? Just let me eat my burger. All right. Anything? I'm sorry. I cut you off once again with my stupidity. Anything else on the topic? You were going somewhere with it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. The second part of recollecting yourself, remembering yourself, getting to know yourself is engage in philosophical dialogue. That's like, Socrates describes that as a mirror for your soul. So you use another person's soul to mirror your own soul. And so you, by submitting yourself to the test, which means say what you believe to be true, allow yourself to be cross-examined and potentially refuted. Like, that's how you learn the truth. That's how you learn about yourself and what you actually know and what you don't know. And then from there, you actually gain yourself, you gain ownership of yourself. He's not talking about it in a libertarian sense, but like you own your beliefs, your values, your ideas, like all of that stuff.
Right. I agree with that 100%. And it's interesting that we live in a society that so doesn't want you to speak your opinions and kind of, so it's so interesting to go, hey, listen, the only way that you can really evolve or have some self-discovery is if you truly believe something, go have a dialogue about it, because then you can at least be convinced that it's wrong or really find out that it's right, and then, live that with more conviction. Okay. Yeah. So I two more, these are totally unrelated. Actually, the first one's a little bit related. I hear a lot about taking drugs and what people describe as ego depletion, and that is supposed and that they also describe that as being a positive thing that happens to them. And I also, from some personal experiences, I get what they're describing, but I'd love to hear kind of the philosophical definition of, like, I don't know what the ego is or whatever the fuck Aristotle or Freud came up with. I don't know. So I'd love a little bit of a definition on, I guess, the short version, or maybe this isn't your department because it's more psychology, or what the classical view of the ego is, and is it a negative thing, or does it have a positive purpose, or are we totally referring to like a negative there? I'm just curious to kind of hear, a little more insight on it.
Yeah, I again, this is outside of my specialty because this is more Freudian psychology.
My entire show is talking about things I know nothing about, so feel free. You can cut loose here.
Well, I mean, I like the ego. I can only talk about the ego, and I can't do it in a psychological way. I can only do it from a philosophical point of view because I really have no idea. It's been so long since I've read Freud. I don't remember most of it because I don't know. He was wrong. He was wrong in an interesting way, but like still, I don't think he was right about stuff. It's still wrong. But I mean, the ego from a philosophical point of view, the self, like there's nothing like wrong about appreciating your ego, because your ego is just like your personality, like who you are, and your belief, the sum collection of your beliefs and your values and your priorities. Like where are you oriented? How are you oriented in this world? Are you I'm always going to go back to Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle because I'm an ancient philosopher. It's what I do.
Yeah.
And so Socrates, was saying to people like, hey, what is it that you are aimed at? Like, what's your purpose? What's your telos? And so, it's like you have to have some kind of a purpose. If you're oriented towards gaining as much wealth, power, and fame as you possibly can, you have relatively corrupt priorities. Your priorities are out of order. He would say what you should be striving for foremost, like you should orient your ego towards self-perfection, wisdom, and virtue. So I don't have a lot to say about the ego other than. So it's not
an inherent negative, which I was in my head. I was running with other people's idea that the ego is a negative, and I kind of came up with this as like a definition, but it's so different than yours. I think I'm just wrong, so I got to think a little bit more on it. But yeah.
See, it means different things. It means different things to different thinkers. And so it means something completely different for the ancient philosophers than it means for even like Descartes. Descartes was the one, he was the so-called father of modern philosophy. And 17th century, I think he died, he was born in the 16th century, died in the 17th century. And he developed what was known as egology. So it's like, we understand the world from the standpoint of the I, and he famously said, "I think, therefore I am." So I is at the center of his universe. It was like the Copernican revolution. Like, it used to be the case that God was at the center of the universe and everything orbited around that. And then just as the Copernican revolution turned everybody's understanding completely upside down, it's like, oh, what do you mean the Earth isn't the center of the universe anymore? And it's the sun and everything orbits around that. So now, like, the egology is, I think, therefore I am. Descartes never came to a satisfying conclusion about, is there a world outside of the I? Is there a world outside of the ego?
Right.
So a playful thing that I do with my students sometimes is say that, the world, the philosophical world before Descartes focused on the I, E-Y-E, because they were interested in form and beauty, and they were interested, like, the ideas. The word for idea is derived from the Greek verb iden, which means to see. So you see ideas, which is why to this day, if you're thinking really hard, you furrow your brow. You're trying to see something literally.
Right.
And so our physiology is even connected to the philosophy dimension.
People think on that note with the furrowing the brow, because I've never heard it put quite like that, but I feel like a lot of times people are looking at me and like they think I got a little bit of a resting bitch face kind of thing, but it's like resting intense face. They just think I'm mad, and it's like, no, you people just don't fucking think. You're looking at me and I'm thinking about shit, so you assume that I'm fucking mad. I'm actually using my fucking brain. So, anyways. Here was my kind of take on ego. I read this book a while ago it was called Getting to Yes, Master Negotiating. I don't really remember it that well, but I remember the one tip of this book was that sometimes, as opposed to, like, a lot of times people think of negotiating like, hey, I'm going to tell someone it costs $150 because really it costs $75. We're going to split the difference. So this book was like, that's retarded. Never do that. What you should do is come up with like fair criteria by which like both parties can agree, and then you can kind of like make a more analytical decision around a standard. So like, for example, like I can't really think of an example. We're an hour in and I've been using my brain a lot. But to tie this into the ego thing, the way sometimes I get this like thought in my head. For example, I was doing pull-ups earlier in the week, and my arms were still sore today. And I had this thought in my head. I was like, why the fuck are my arms still sore? I should be able to go do it's been 4 days. Do I really have a body? It doesn't like refresh in 4 days. And then I was like, well, based on what standard? You're living in a body and it's telling you it's been 4 days. So where's this fictional idea of the way your body should work coming from? And I feel like to me, that's kind of the ego thoughts. That happens sometimes, like, with my comedy career, I'll be like, hey, I should be, well, based on what? Based on what evidence? Like what are you drawing from in your perception of this, like, like this fictional reality where you think you should be in one place when your actual reality is in a different place? So I almost feel like, to me, the ego is like, it's this little voice in the brain that has this theoretical concept of where you should be that's like inflated. And then there's reality, which is just separate from that, dumb thing that wants to, it almost makes you suffer that you're comparing you to some fictional standard that never existed.
Well, isn't that just like comparing your unique individual singular experience of this reality to what you perceive to be the norm because of, I don't know, what people are saying on social media or the health literature you've read about exercise and muscle recovery and stuff like that?
Yeah, I guess you're right.
So it's like, yeah. In that case,
so it's just you have bad information and you're comparing yourself to bad information.
Well, and as doctors who take care of bodies, they have to have, there's a certain kind of like threshold or standard that they need to use to measure, like blood pressure or cholesterol or stuff like that. And they're, I think they're kind of wrong about that stuff, but that's a different issue entirely. So, they have some baseline of like, okay, there's something common to all human beings. And so if there's something common to all human beings, blood pressure being like perhaps one of them, then all right, you're getting a little high if it's like, like 180 over 100. So, you need to do something about that. But so there is like a common human nature, which is a topic for probably a different time, because the human nature aspect is, well, it's not something that we can easily crack open right now.
All right, so last topic I wanted to discuss, and this is annoying because I sent myself a screenshot of the page, but I think you and I, we were talking, I lost it. I think you and I were talking about this a little bit off air. It was a fascinating topic, and then it didn't actually, from what I remember, make it onto the episode. But I was reading the Bitcoin Standard the other day. We discussed it a couple episodes back, and in one of the chapters, he talks about that the influence of government money in the arts is that, as opposed to kind of the marketplace rewarding certain individuals for their talents, which is usually a lifetime invested in really being talented, now you have basically people like the government kind of, run the museums and shit, and they purchase stuff. So you just have some random individual who is a bureaucrat who goes, hey, I like this. And the result of a random bureaucrat as opposed to the market going, hey, I like this, the rewarding stuff that isn't actually remarkably talented. And so the result is, like, us as a society, we have worse art. And now what I'd love to kind of take that and, like, I wonder in academia how perverted it is by government grants and government money that, like, what is actually kind of, like, look at it this way, because you said on the last, you said something like, UC school is like a constant, you used some bold line, I forgot what it was, but even as a teacher, you don't have the most fond opinion of the school experience, and you got to realize if there was zero government money in education, they'd really have to train you directly for whatever job you were about to get, or people wouldn't pay for it. It wouldn't be the investment that it is. So I understand that, this, like, even from the look of it, you're like, holy shit, you just sparked, like, a big one for, the end of already being an hour in. But I'd love to hear just a little bit on the direct influence on government money to, like, maybe gender studies existing, or people just, like, researching and really just out there with asinine ideas that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for kind of government money in academia.
Yeah, I want to go back to your example of the art being purchased by a bureaucrat, and now we get bad art. And you said, well, it's just because, like, they don't have refined tastes and they choose crappy art, and
it's just it's not the market. It's not the market.
Well,
the market is the hive mind. You can't beat the hive mind.
You're being too kind to the bureaucrats, because I would say they're doing this intentionally. Like, they're flooding us with bad art intentionally because it breaks the spirit. And so I mean, I think it's planned. I don't think it's there. You don't find a lot of bad art just accidentally. It doesn't work its way up to the top levels. Like, you don't find bad art in museums spontaneously and randomly. It's chosen to be there. It's designed to be there. It's designed to demoralize and to degrade humanity, to make us think less of ourselves and each other. And I think the exact same thing is true of the schooling system. I won't even call it education, because it's not. It's systemic child abuse. And it is, like, even at the higher levels, even at the university level, it's there are pockets of great people out there. There are great professors out there. There are great, even, K through 12 teachers out there. I'm not disparaging the individuals. I'm just saying the system as a whole is designed to break spirits. And so I think that's true also of higher education, college and university level. And why do you see gender studies, environmental citizenship, or I don't know, underwater vagina ballet, like whatever the hell they make up good. Like this week.
Yeah.
you might actually like that.
Yeah, you piqued my interest. Is that a real thing? Where's that showing? Because all of a sudden I like ballet.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a bunch of, like, ridiculous circus bullshit. And I feel awful because, when I first went to college a long time ago, it wasn't like this. And when I first started teaching 20 years ago, it wasn't like this.
What's the big shift? I wasn't in college 20 years ago. 10. I wasn't even that long. Jesus. I was in college a long time ago. So anyways, 20 years ago, what was it like?
Well,
like, what would you say? And we'll close on this, but I'm interested.
Well, there weren't stupid, pointless, queer studies.
Yeah.
study that in your copious spare time. Don't inflict me with it, and don't. Okay, there was an email that Tom Woods sent out. I think it was yesterday. For those of you who know who Tom Woods is, and it was which one of these articles found in a published, like a peer-reviewed journal, which one of these is fake? Well, I read all three of them. I really wanted to get the right answer. I was like, oh God, one had to do with like sweaty bodies, and it's like feminist spatiality around like sweaty bodies, and how that impacts our understanding of our. I don't. It was just such crap. And then there was one about, I don't know, gay mathematics or something, and childhood normalizing childhood obesity, like making children feel more accepted. Like,
yeah,
because because like fat
boys
shaming
can have
is not
tits
good
too
for
now.
kids. Yeah, and guys can get abortions and all kinds of wonderful stuff. So I was really trying to get the right answer, and then of course you scroll down and Tom's like, haha, fooled you, they're all real, and here are the actual journal publications.
That sucks, because you probably really were trying to wrap your head around it. Did you send him an angry email like, please don't do that to me again?
I didn't work that hard, because I know what these assholes do. I know what they're like, and I know the kind of crap. There's a reason I don't bother publishing in academic journals. Remember, there was just like a year, maybe not even a year ago, there were those 3 journal articles that were accepted by they were accepted by 3 award-winning peer-reviewed published journals, and they got in, like, they were fake articles, completely fake, but there was a team of 3 professors. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I gotta look that up though. It sounds hilarious.
Yeah, and one was like rape culture in dog parks.
You mean because the dogs rape each other, and so it normalizes rape? That's why I go to the dog park, because I'm like, dude, if I can download myself into an alternate reality, I want that. I want to be the big dog, walking around the dog park, raping all the small dogs.
Well, yeah. They found out, though, later on, because these 3 professors, and they weren't libertarians and they weren't conservatives, they were typical liberal professors, but they saw that the whole trend of academia is down to hell. I think, what's his name? The country singer, Merle Haggard, said like a snowball headed towards hell. That's what academia is. You know what? So
I gotta
these articles to show.
No, there seems to be a bit of a delay. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go for it.
There is a delay.
It's okay.
They wrote articles to show that, like academic, like the journal quality and the quality of research, it's gone. There's,
you know what? This sounds so funny to me. I don't want to rip off Tom Wood's bit, but if you come across any listener out there, if you come across some really wild, articles, I'll start doing a peer review on my show of like the dumbest of academia. All right, listen, this was so much fun. We got to do it again next time something comes across my radar that's in the philosophies. We'll definitely reach out. Also, if you're out there, robsnewsroom@gmail.com. If you got random things you'd like for me and the professor to cover, email me. And anything else you want to, plug or throw out there before we call it an episode?
I just want to say thanks for having me on again. This was a blast.
No, this was a ton of fun. We definitely got to do it again. I really appreciate it. And stick with us. Yosef's going to be calling in shortly, and we're gonna go from this to talking about meatloaf. So that's going to be fun.
Run your mouth, bitch. Yo, we out of our minds. Run your mouth.
All right, and now we have Mr. Feldstein on the phone, who, this is an important conversation that needed to be had, and that's why he's actually willing to take it from the road. Mr. Felt, where are you traveling to? Where are you going from?
From home to anywhere not home.
Oh, you're just leaving. You're just hitting the road.
I'm just going wherever it takes me.
You might as well
I used to do that a lot back in like high school.
Like, just drive.
It'd be like in the car and just sit and like be like, okay, I'm not gonna make a single turn, or something like that,
and
or
then
just like
all
only
right,
left turn, and like just like where you'd end up. It generally ended up just like going like in a big circle in Stanford, and like very. But like when you're high, like that's exciting, and it's like, oh my god, we made a big circle! Whoa!
I remember. This is what I love about potheads. I was once in the car with a friend of mine who was a big pothead, and I turned to him and I was like, "Hey, man, I think I might be going the wrong way." And he's just like, "Yeah, I don't care."
That's basically what it was.
Yeah.
But
by the way,
I'm going to Muncie.
Oh, what? Just shopping to get some kosher food, get some Shabbos grub.
You inspired me, Rob.
You're gonna
inspired me. I need a.
You're gonna get some kishka.
You know, I already have the kishka. I need to get. I'm thinking about maybe getting a flank steak to throw in my chillin' to Shabbos.
Oh, because you saw pictures of my flank steak, and you're like, I gotta get on that myself.
I was very skeptical that it was gonna pan out in the crock pot. I didn't want to be associated, but it looks like it. The crock pot's very forgiving specimen.
There you go. So, all right. Well, you know what? Let's fill the listeners in. Not all of them follow me on Twitter, but you should. There's no reason why you listen to the show.
Today. You blew up on Twitter today. I think this was your coming out party for Twitter. I think you need to, embrace this.
Okay.
Like, you need to, just, focus on because people are kind of they go to you as the sandwich guru. Let's call a spade a spade. You're the people's sandwich champ. You're like The Rock, but
for sandwiches. Yeah. Well, someone's got to do it.
And now, you're kind of expanding horizons. And today, this is a big coming of age moment for you on Twitter.
I agree 100%. But guys, if you're not already, I'm on Twitter. It's Robbie the Fire. I know we don't really do news jokes on the show anymore, and it's because tweeting is just so much faster. When I'm reading the shit, I just tweet it. So if you missed that part of the show, engage with me on Twitter. But in this case, what I did was I'm getting a little too sick of all the restaurants that are surrounding me in the East Village. I'm a little sandwiched out at the moment, and I decided I got to start.
Don't ever say that. You're the people's sandwich champion.
Well, I'm going to figure out how to use this crock pot so I can start making delicious sandwiches at home. And I started...
You'll get there.
Yeah, I started simple, and we're going to get into... Anyways, I bought this crock pot because I can't really cook in my apartment. Every time I've ever tried cooking anything on my stove, I end up setting off the fucking fire alarms. The only opportunity I really have to cook is basically at 12 or 1 a.m. when I get back to the place. And you can't really be cooking up a storm with the roommate. So I was like, fuck it. I'm getting a crock pot. I'm going to start living this crock pot life. And so last night, yeah, go ahead. If you got something on that, go ahead.
And you've been having shitty breakfasts.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been eating no, I've been going to my bagel store and eating bagels with turkey and egg and maybe some.
No, I'm just saying that you're now
oh, this is a different tier of breakfast.
Crazy breakfast.
Yeah, this is
insanity.
This is
pure insanity.
This is backwards living at its best, everybody.
Yes.
But
you know what it is it could be a new revolution.
It could be.
Don't view it as breakfast. View it as your opening meal.
Your opening
first meal.
Kickstarting the day.
The opener.
I went through a lot of emotions because first I get the crock pot, and like any new toy, I just get really excited for it. I go right to the market to go shopping, and I even cook with the only thing I've ever cooked in a crock pot is cholent. I have a pretty good cholent recipe, and I actually tried calling Yosef from the supermarket for guidance. He didn't get back to me in the supermarket, but he got back to me remarkably fast. I was very impressed, and I appreciate that he got back to me.
Good turnaround time when I see phone calls from the people that are near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, it was
people that aren't. I kind of don't, but when I see a call from Robbie the Fire Bernstein, instant callback.
I should, you know what? Instead of just calling,
sets off the alerts.
I should text sandwich in need. We should have the equivalent of the bat signal or something, so that we can walkie-talkies for direct access when it's food related. So, anyways, I'm putting together a crockpot dish for myself, and I'm telling you, Yosef, I put the thing together, and then I got so excited, and then I was using the crockpot, and then I literally walked out of the kitchen. I was like, "This fucking sucks. I got to wait 8 hours to eat that."
Yeah, I was actually after our call where you looked to me for guidance, but really it seemed like you had everything together. and you were just kind of calling to brag instead of
no, I really,
from me.
I really wasn't.
No,
I really wasn't. I'm not a confident man.
No. I know that you actually called because like you wanted a sounding board of sorts with me to, make sure that like to get advice on the thing. But turned out it was very one-sided. I was like, okay, I don't know if you should do this. You're like, no, this is happening. I'm doing this.
Oh, well, that's true.
I'm like,
I definitely, I'm definitely guilty of that. Calling
I think
people,
it's the salesman in you.
Calling people for advice and then them telling me something. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm just not going to do that. But thanks, I appreciate the advice. Yeah, I definitely.
Yeah, like, what the fuck? Like, I hung up the phone from that. I was like, what the fuck was that? Because that sure wasn't like. I thought I was being like. I thought it was like being called for. Like. A serious like deep talk and like I was this like spiritual Sherpa of sorts for your new cooking device, which I would say I'm pretty well.
Well, you are. You're well versed and but
I really appreciate when you said like, oh, I got this crock pot. I'm coming directly to you. I was like, that's perfect. And then you were like, fuck you, Yosef. I don't care what you say about the crock pot. This is what's going on.
You confirmed my spice game. You confirmed the water I was supposed to use. You confirmed a lot of elements.
Oh no, right. The water was the only thing that I.
You also
to that. The spice, I was like, you just said these are the spices I have. This is what's going in. And there was really no no conversation about that.
You talked me out of the rice, and then we had a disagreement about whether a piece of meat would work out, and it was just because you didn't get a good visual of it, because that was the piece of meat that actually cooked rather nicely. So anyways, but then I went to sleep very excited for breakfast, and then I woke up in the morning. The apartment smelled delicious, dude. I mean, I freshened the entire apartment building up.
I know that.
So anyways, I woke up this morning. I had a delicious breakfast of potatoes with this piece of I know it is flunken meat because that's the Jew word for it, but it wasn't flunken meat. It was
totally
technically
not flunken meat.
Oh, but it cut
flank steak.
It was flank steak. Well, it cut very similarly. It also both has the word flank and flunken. I don't know. It seems like it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I think flunken is just the Jew word for flank steak.
Flunken is short ribs. No, flunken is short ribs.
Really?
And flank steak is flank steak's like it's a kind of tough cut of beef that, again, as I said to you last night, typically you're gonna want to marinate that for a while and then like sear it or cook it under a broiler pretty quickly, but you went a different route, and I think it's, as I said before, the crock pot is a very forgiving
well, I showed you the pictures of that cut of meat, and the way that thing's sliced is undeniable that that's a perfect cook.
You did cut. Next time, I want you, my advice and guidance on that, I want you to cut it against the grain. But that's for a different discussion.
I don't even know what that means. That shows my knowledge of cooking steaks.
That'll be lesson number 2.
All right, so now, Yosef, here's my big question for you.
Let's hear.
The only thing I've ever cooked in a crock pot is cholent. And cholent, it's basically, I'm going to tell people what cholent is. It's basically kosher stew. It's stew made by the Jews on their Sabbath.
Super beefy stew.
Yeah, my recipe would be flunken meat, barley, chopped up onions, chopped up potatoes. I don't like the beans. I left the beans out. I would put in
what?
Yeah,
I actually my cholent recipe was changed for the better based on you telling me that your cholent recipe had vegetarian.
Yeah, the Heinz beans.
The pre.
The pre-cooked beans.
Heinz beans.
The pre-cooked beans are a great move. Over the years, listen. I got a weak stomach. I think we've addressed this, and so I avoid the beans, but I do love the beans. The beans are delicious. I used to eat beans in all sorts of dishes, but these days I'm bean free. I think I'm full-time dairy free. We're gonna get into that into a minute, Yosef. Yosef, we're gonna have to discuss that in a minute, but first we're gonna discuss crock pot living.
We're gonna continue on the crock pot. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Okay, so my spice game. I'm really into the cumin. I'm really into hot red pepper. From there, I like my minced garlic, my onion powder. and some pepper. I don't even really use a lot of sauce, and I like some barbecue sauce, and you fill that thing up with water. Now
you didn't put barbecue sauce in that, did you?
Yeah, I did, man. I did. I put in a hickory smoked barbecue sauce. It was delicious, dude. That spice and seasoning was so on point you wouldn't believe it. I like a nice sweet and spicy combo. Now, here's what I was unaware of when it comes to crock pots. I didn't realize that you could cook in them without filling them up with water. I thought it was solely for when you're cooking things basically in water. I didn't realize that, I was looking at recipes online. People just put drumsticks in there and kind of cover them, with some barbecue sauce, and will let those things cook. Have you cooked things in a crock? I basically thought crock pots were a vehicle for kind of, I guess, for lack of a better term, basically slow boiling food. I didn't realize that there was an option for, cooking dry food in them.
For sure. You actually, without even knowing it, 2 weeks ago, you ate something out of a crock pot that
was the meatloaf. Yeah, that makes sense that it didn't have any liquid, but I didn't put that together. So here's the next thing. Here's the next two things I really want to experiment with, and so I'd love to get your feedback on cooking them up. So one is
underage boys, and
I want to get a package of drumsticks, cut off the skin, and then shred up all the chicken, cut up the chicken into chunks, and then I want to throw that in there. And then how do I cook that up? So I have like a dark meat shredded chicken thing. I'm thinking it probably needs about 4 hours on low to cook. But what kind of spice game am I looking at? What do I throw a barbecue sauce in there to let it cook in the barbecue sauce? Is it no water whatsoever? You go completely dry with it. I'm looking for a little insight here on what might be a good shredded chicken recipe within the crock pot.
Shredded chicken or chicken drumsticks?
Well, I want to cook chicken drumsticks, but I want
totally different.
I want to take it all off the bone. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of cutting.
You want the shredded chicken, but the dark meat.
Yeah, I want to cut. Yeah, because I don't think you can really cook white meat in a crock pot. I think we'll dry out too much. But I'm thinking if I cut off.
I definitely disagree with that because one of my favorite crock pot dishes is white meat chicken, and it's the most simple recipe ever.
Oh, lay it on me.
You might have had it also.
Okay, lay it on me.
I think you might have heard, but this is the go-to standard, at least for me. It's you could probably do it shredded, and you probably will do it better because you could probably do some melted cheese with it also. But simple. I think it's 4 ingredients total.
Okay.
You get chicken cutlets, and I'm sure you could do it dark meat also, off the bone. But chicken cutlets, a bag of frozen corn, again, simple, a can of black beans, and a jar of salsa. And you just put it in a crock pot, mix it all together, and it's this. And you could probably spice it up if you want to add some added heat to it. You pour some hot sauce or.
But I can cook
whatever.
I can cook
whatever
in salsa.
Spices you want to. Oh, 100%.
Okay, so then that's going to be
the greatest thing. You put it in, and it's 4 to 6 hours, maybe the first hour on high, and then 4 or 5 hours on low.
I got a crazy.
And you'll have enough.
Oh shit! We went out again.
I'm here.
Okay, I got a crazy concept. I this might just sound gross.
Hold on, wait. Let me just finish out the.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The chicken thing. It's gonna kind of get all encompassed, the beans, the corn, the salsa, and the chicken, and the chicken becomes this soft, delicious, very flaky chicken that you could just basically turn into an amazing shredded chicken, or just chicken that you cut and it's fine.
Can I do you think I could
make it into sandwiches, you just shred that up and it's this
How do you bread your chicken?
But how do I bread?
Yeah, are you dipping it in egg and then dipping it in flour and then back an egg and then a cornflake or something? How do you, when you're making chicken cutlet, or do you just mean grilled chicken? Yeah, when I hear
no, you just raw chicken.
Oh, when I hear chicken, maybe this is wrong. I might be wrong on this one. Chicken cutlet to me is a breaded chicken, grilled chicken.
That's you chicken cutlet as you're thinking strictly
deli
sandwiches. I'm talking raw chicken cutlet you just throw right in. You don't do any. That's what it's super simple.
Like a piece of chicken breast. Yeah, okay, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, chicken breast. Oh, okay, chicken breast inside of chicken cutlet. Yeah, that's fair.
That's fine. Listen, everyone gets things wrong. It's okay. Now, what do you think of this? A salsa. I want to throw salsa in, chop up some jalapeno peppers, and then just some meatballs. Just cook meatballs overnight in like a spicy salsa. Would that work?
100%.
Well, now, do you think whole pieces of garlic, would that work in there?
Whole pieces of garlic?
Yeah, if I threw garlic in with salsa and jalapeno peppers and meatballs, or would that be too much? That might not flow. I've made garlicky meatballs, but not with the jalapenos. It's like a different thing, you know?
Yeah,
I'm looking at video footage of your. I'm looking at video footage of your ear.
Well, it was up in my ear to hear you.
Okay.
Pulled it back because I didn't want to.
So let's go back to my shredded, not white meat chicken, my dark meat chicken idea of cutting up my chicken. What would you recommend as a sauce to cook that in? So also, you're saying I could do totally no water in there whatsoever. I could literally, if I wanted to, just cut up that chicken, put it in the crock pot for 4 hours with zero sauce, and I would come back to cook chicken.
Yeah.
My concept of thinking you needed water in a crock pot is just certifiably false.
Yeah, but it definitely helps.
So what kind of can I do can I literally just cook that up like in hot sauce, or would that just be too ridiculous?
That would be a little too ridiculous. You want like a little bit of
but like hot sauce and barbecue sauce I could do. Hot sauce barbecue
doesn't dry out.
So hot sauce barbecue sauce, a little bit of water, but at that point if I'm putting in water,
perfect.
can I just fill the thing up with water, or do you just want to kind of
because then
layer it?
You'll get like a boiled type chicken type.
I got it. You just want a little bit in there so that
so it like steams up and kind of
Can you say
sauce it the fuck up, hot sauce it, and just stick those in, and then let it slow cook, and then you're gonna end up with what I think is gonna be perfect for you, because that's a nice chicken that you can shred up and pack on a nice Kaiser roll.
Hell yeah, because we all know I love those Kaiser rolls. All right, now last thing on this. When I'm throwing the water on, is it water basically just to layer? Like, in other words, like water just above basically where your chicken line is, that all your chicken's is submerged in water, but not really submerged, just like till the top line? Or am I just putting water in there so that there's some water in there?
With this chicken, just not all the way up. If you're kind of targeting
let's say there's
stew type thing, or like what you did with the meat last night, you're gonna want it all the way to the top, because you want it like to be in kind of a kind of fully encompass that beef that you're talking about, and also kind of get those onions and potatoes kind of cooked.
I like it.
They're not really gonna cook well. If you're doing just like chicken, and sauce, like that's good enough, or like just meatballs or ground beef. And sauce, like that's good enough. And if you want to develop a stew-like chillin' thing, you're going to want to have enough water to cover all the grains that are going to, like the barley and those things that are going to need the water to get that stuff.
Got it. All right, so here's what I want to put out there.
That's what develops that stew-like consistency, as opposed to the consistency that you woke up this morning to with your kind of like beefy kind of broth, I imagine.
Oh, dude, can I tell you, I tried it straight just to see if you could eat it as a soup.
Gross.
I burnt my tongue a little bit, but it was fucking delicious. I was really
I wanted like a beef broth.
It was so good. I only did one spoonful of it, but my spice game was so on point that if someone I would have eaten that as a soup if someone had better like little piece of meat. Like totally could have eaten that as a soup. If you threw like some like lentils in there with like thin sliced beef, holy shit. Oh, here's another one I wanted to ask you about. What about chopping up peppers and doing like a pepper steak in there? You just chop up your peppers. You throw in your pepper steak. But what kind of a sauce would I?
You don't even need that much water because there's enough kind of liquid in the peppers if you're putting in enough that it will use like
chop up peppers, onions, maybe jalapeno peppers also, and just probably only 2 hours.
Thinly sliced like steak pieces for sure. Or like those pepper steak packs.
All right, so
yeah, you can definitely do that.
Here's what I want to throw out there.
You know what I've done before?
I'm listening.
This is more like a future looking thing as opposed to like a one dish. If you get like I don't know, 5-pound bag of onions, and you just chop all those fucking onions in, and you line the bottom of the crock pot with like a little olive oil, and then pour in some like a little salt and pepper, and then just onions for whatever 6-8 hours. It makes like just unbelievable like caramelized onions that you just that. What I do is kind of sock it away in the freezer and then pull them out as necessary.
I like it. And
talk about what your apartment will smell like with that. It'll smell like deliciousness for about a week.
Oh, I could use deliciousness for a week.
That could be just like a potpourri like thing you do. Just
to freshen the place up.
Onions.
Yeah, there we go.
And your neighbors also will definitely appreciate that.
They'll knock on my door and be like, dude, I don't know what you did in there. It smells oniony.
What you are having.
Invite us over for dinner and you just serve them a tray of onions. All right, so here's what I want to put out there. I'm stepping up my sandwich game. For years, I was going to bodegas, and I mastered ordering a delicious sandwich. I could show up anywhere. I could work that menu. I could work it left, right, center, different angles, mix and match, pull out the perfect bread, experiment with what's the best at this sandwich shop, what's the best at that sandwich shop, roll into a town, know exactly what I'm expecting from what place I'm going to get it from. Come on in, Brian. We're talking making stews at home in your pressure cookers, and you're an expert on this. You're a pulled pork guy. I've seen you in here with delicious pulled pork. I'm talking about stepping up my sandwich game now that I've bought a crock pot, and I'm going to start experimenting.
Crock pot life.
Pulled meat sandwiches. Listen, this is going to be a whole new thing. And you know what? This is what life is about. It's about challenging yourself. It's not just accepting, hey, I'm an expert at ordering sandwiches from sandwich shops. It's about bringing it into your own home and going, I'm going to step up my game. I'm going to start with fresh ingredients. I'm going to start with concoctions from scratch, where I'm doing all the labor and taking part in more of the deliciousness all the way down to the raw ingredients. So listen, I'm going to be tweeting out there, what I'm eating for breakfast every morning when I wake up and it's fresh and ready to go. Meatball subs. Yes.
You're not taking over the means of production.
Exactly. I will be taking over the means of production away from the sandwich shop owners and back into my own home and reporting on. And you know what? It might take me a couple months before I become a full-scale crockpot expert, but I promise you, 3 months out, you come over to the Bernstein residence any morning at 9 a.m. for breakfast, and you will not get a meal anywhere else.
Yeah.
All right, impassioned impassioned plea. All right, Yosef, this is why. Actually, before I move on to that, you might get mad at me for this. This comes from
always
a private conversation within a private group. It's really not a place that you're supposed to take topics and then, bring them outside of the group, and certainly not to a public forum like this. But I read a posting that you were actually training for a farting contest in India. So
that's true.
I think
I've been training my whole life actually for that.
Well, can you tell people about the contest, what you win? And I think you got the angle here because they don't even really eat meat out there, and most of them are pretty skinny. So, they might. I've been in their buildings though. Sometimes what they eat just smells alone. So they must be stirring up some real juicy, greasy, stinky farts. So how exactly do you think you're going to win this thing? What's the angle?
Well, listen. I know nothing about this. I know nothing. I didn't even read the article. I just saw the headline. But I know that I've been training my entire life for it.
You just knew that you were destined to win this contest.
Exactly. I know nothing about the logistics about it. I know nothing about what the rules are, how you compete, where you go. But I know for a fact that if I go out there, I will win that thing because, and I think Harrington could attest to that as well.
Maybe, I've never wanted to go the Kickstarter route. I've never wanted to charge for, I mean, at some point I hope to make money off of my content, but for now, it's not really the route I've been going. But I'd love to get a Kickstarter campaign for filming the documentary of you winning the India's Best Farting Is that the title? What's the official title? What exactly can you win here?
Again, I know nothing about it. I don't know what I could win. I just know that I will not be able to be beat.
Well, I would love to go on other podcasts to promote that I'm doing a Kickstarter campaign for my co-host to be flown to India to compete in the fart contest. So if you're game to go along on this bit, maybe we could drum up some interest and a little press. You let me know how ham you want to go on this, but this certainly could be a fun one.
Oh, for sure. Seriously, if anyone's willing to send me out there, I will drop everything. I will drop everything and do that. And
we could do a montage of you eating beans and farting and Harrington in a room about to vomit. We could have a lot of fun with this. All right. Well,
dun, 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 dun.
I'm thinking more. Yeah. Oh, all right. There you go. I was thinking more of the Rocky music. Dun, 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 dun. Take it away, Yosef. Dun, 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 dun. All right. Well, we'll get working on that, and we'll get better songs. Don't think we're done with that bit. All right. So, Yosef. Oh, I think he hung up on me again. Are you out there? Are you there, Yosef? I think that's an episode. I don't know what happened to Yosef. I hope he's safe out there. I mean, who knows? Kind of got cut short. We were balls deep into conversation about cooking up meatballs, maybe making a stew, maybe putting peppers and onions in there. I had some other recipes I was going to get into, but Yosef's just gone, so looks like we got to call an episode. Maybe next week he'll actually come into studio, and then we can, really discuss crockpots. I was hoping to do this for maybe 2-3 hours, just recipe talk, recipe after recipe, like a bunch of old ladies just sitting around going, hey, have you tried cooking up this pie? And the other one's like, no, I never tried that pie. Usually I only make a peach cobbler, and you're all talking about apples, and, I've never really tried apples in a pie. And then the other one's like, no, apples are the more traditional thing to put into a pie. People don't even put peaches into a pie. Peach cobbler, that shouldn't even be considered a pie. And then some other lady's like, no, cherries. Well, what's all this talk about apples and peach? You're telling me you're going out and you're making pies and you're making it with apples and peaches when cherries clearly the better of the pies. And then some other lady's like, no. Listen, blueberry pie is clearly the standard pie. And everyone's like, boo, fucking blueberry. Blueberry's the worst, unless it's in a muffin. Blueberries are excellent in a muffin. But if you get a blueberry Pop-Tart, clearly the worst Pop-Tart. You get, I guess the blueberry piece of pie. That's not a blueberry cake. I mean, I like blueberry cake, but it's not the best cake. I mean, it's not even your top 50 cakes. You gotta go through about 50 cakes before you get to what is delicious about a blueberry cake. You do get the powdered sugar on the top. Sometimes they're real moist, but a blueberry cake, you're almost like, dude, why don't you just make me a blueberry muffin? You've never even seen a blueberry cookie. That's why that is proof of the fact of just how poor blueberries are in terms of if you're going to be making a dessert product. This is the old lady still. She's very adamant about the fact that blueberry makes for the worst pie. Someone else is like, well, I'll make the 4-way pie so everyone can have what they want. And everyone's like, no, that doesn't work, because if you make the 4-way pie, you end up with those like in-between slices where it's not really comboing that well. When you get the peach is kind of bleeding into the blueberry, and it just doesn't work. If you're eating pie, you want to eat like a piece of just your pie. And then the apple pie lady goes, listen, I get that you guys are all into the blueberry pie, and I get that you're into the cherry pie, but you got to understand, if you're eating the apple pie, you can actually eat this with vanilla ice cream. And everyone's like, dude, you're cheating then. We're trying to have a conversation about pie. You're talking about ice cream going on top of pie. That's more of an ice cream dish. You're basically turning your pie into a cone or something. That's not a traditional pie dish. We're over here. We're trying to compete pies. You're coming out of nowhere talking about ice cream. We're talking about traditional pies. Then out of nowhere, some lady's like, dude, I make a banana cream pie. And everyone's like, I don't know, does cream count? Is cream like ice cream, or is that part of the actual pie? The point here is Yosef's gone, and I was hoping to banter way more about crockpots, but that's going to be our episode. And tune in next week. Hit me up on follow me on Twitter. It's what's my Twitter? Robbie the Fire. Email me, robsnewsroom@gmail.com. Particularly if you have a good crockpot recipe and you email me. I don't really want to get into the pork game just yet, and I don't want to discuss why, but email me, robsnewsroom@gmail.com. I'm looking for new that's my new life. I'm an old lady who likes discussing recipes with his friend because I don't know. That's what I'm doing now. So email me, robsnewsroom@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter, Robbie the Fire. And lastly is share this fucking show, dude. I mean, you saw Shane Gillis. No one, that guy fucking got to SNL, and then they're like, you can't do this. I've said worse things on every one of my platforms. So there is no job. There's no more, hey, I'm going to do this until I get so good at it, someone's going to pay me to work some kind of a job. That doesn't exist in the world. The only platform is this. It's this right here. It's me talking about blueberry pies and trying to find an audience of people that want to hear me ramble about blueberry pies, so that hopefully at some point I can quit my day job and spend more time talking about also, who knows, I haven't traveled the world tasting all different kinds of pies to really have a refined palate so I can really get more in depth on this stuff. And if you guys want to hear it, the only way that will ever happen, the only way that we'll ever live in a world where I can really become a crockpot and pie expert is if you people get out there and you tell your friends that they should follow the show also, so we can get this thing to like 10,000 weekly listeners, get some sponsors of products that you guys will like. Everyone will start making money, and we're really not going to make any money because any money that we bring in is going to go right to show budget. I promise you, we'll start doing food reviews on the show. We'll start filming sketches. We'll start doing additional food reviews on the show. And we'll basically just eat more food actually on the show. But that's our episode. Once again, I figured if I rambled long enough, Yosef might reappear. But he's gone. I don't know what happens to the guy. Maybe he disappeared for good. Maybe he decided I am just going to continue to venture in the world and, see where I end up. Or maybe he's listening right now and he realized, holy shit, I can't go home. That ramble just made me hungry for pie. And if you don't end this episode by going out and eating yourself some pie, I don't even care if you cheat and you get one of those little Entenmann fruit pies, which I haven't eaten in years. And it's almost like a disgrace for pie. It's not even shaped like pie. Can you call it? I guess you can call yourself like ice cream. All right. I don't know. We've had enough. Thanks for joining us. Have a good one. Bye.